"Mom, we can't go back inside." I was halfway through unbuckling my seatbelt when my 9-year-old whispered it, so quiet, so urgent, that my body reacted before my mind did. "Why?" I asked. His fingers tightened around my sleeve. "I heard strangers talking about us. My name is Rachel Morgan," and in that moment, every instinct I had as a mother snapped awake. 10 minutes earlier, I had dropped my younger brother, Evan, off for his night shift at the warehouse. Same routine as always. Late hours, cheap coffee, tired waves, goodbye. We'd laughed about something stupid on the drive home. Nothing felt wrong then. But now, my son's eyes were wide in a way I'd never seen before. Not panicked. Calculating. Listening. "Where?" I whispered. "Near the hallway," he said. "By Evan's room." They didn't know I was there. I didn't ask questions. I didn't tell him he was imagining things. I did what mothers do when the air turns dangerous. "Hide," I said. We slipped inside quietly, shoes left by the door. I pulled him behind the couch, pressing us into the narrow space between old furniture and cold wall. The house smelled like detergent and leftover soup. Familiar. Safe. Too safe. My phone was still in my hand, screen dark. I didn't unlock it. I didn't breathe loud. We waited. 1 minute. 3. 5. Muffled voices floated through the house. Low, unfamiliar, careful. Not Evan's. Not ours. My son pressed his face into my shoulder. I felt his heartbeat through his sweatshirt. Then came footsteps. Heavy. Unhurried. 10 minutes after we hid, I leaned just enough to see past the couch. And that's when I froze. Because whoever was standing in our living room wasn't lost. They were waiting. The living room looked almost normal at first glance. Evan's worn-out couch, my chipped coffee table, the scattering of toys my son had left behind. But something was off. The shadow moving near the window didn't belong. I gripped my son's hand tighter. "Stay quiet," I whispered. His small nod was enough. The stranger turned slowly, and I caught the glint of something metallic in their hand. My heart skipped. Not yet, I told myself. Not yet. Memories of my childhood flashed. My father's warning tones, my mother's sharp eyes whenever someone sneaked into our home without permission. Fear wasn't new to me, but the adrenaline running through my veins now was sharper, cleaner. Protective. Fierce. I counted the seconds, each one stretching into eternity. 1 step. 2. The stranger paused near the TV, their silhouette framed by the dim streetlight streaming through the blinds. I realized they weren't alone. Another shadow emerged from the hall, this one smaller, moving faster. My stomach twisted. "What are they doing here?" my son whispered, barely audible. "They're going to leave," I said, even though I knew better. I didn't want him panicking. Not now. Not ever. The larger figure muttered something under their breath. Words I couldn't hear, but the tone made the hair on my arms stand. Intent. Threat. Then the first figure's eyes locked with mine. Not directly, but just enough for me to feel the weight of recognition. They knew I was there. A slow, deliberate smile spread across their face. And I knew in that moment that this was no ordinary intrusion. This was personal. I pressed my son further into the couch, and I promised myself silently, I would protect him. No matter what. The footsteps moved again, closer to the hallway. I held my breath. The air felt heavier now, thick with the quiet of anticipation. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, loud and insistent, reminding me that running wasn't an option. Not with him here, not with my son in my arms. The stranger paused at the edge of the hallway, fingers brushing against the doorframe. I could see the shadows twist under the flickering hallway light, like something alive was moving toward us. I glanced down at my son Ethan. His eyes were wide, innocent and terrified. I tightened my grip on his small hand, feeling the pulse of his fear mix with my own. I thought back to the summer when my brother had gone missing for 3 days. The panic, the desperate search, the hollow ache of not knowing. That memory sharpened something inside me now, a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. The intruder's steps grew closer. 1, 2, then a pause. Their head tilted as if sensing something, hearing something beyond the ordinary. I held my breath. Ethan squeezed my hand. A whisper floated from the hallway, "I know you're here." My stomach dropped. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. I recognized it instantly. The last time I'd heard that tone, it had been laced with power and cruelty. The kind of cruelty that leaves a mark not on the body but on the soul. I didn't panic. Not yet. I knew fear could be a weapon, but calm could be one too. I pressed myself against the wall, inching toward the kitchen doorway, the plan forming in my mind. If I could reach the side door, we could escape. The intruder moved again, a deliberate shuffle, close enough that I could see the edge of their smirk. I whispered to Ethan, "Trust me. We're getting out. Just stay close." And as the first footstep brushed the living room rug, I knew this night would change everything. The kitchen door loomed ahead like a promise. I could feel Ethan's small hand trembling in mine, but he stayed quiet, trusting me completely. That trust fueled me, gave me clarity I didn't know I had. I slid my feet silently across the tile, careful not to make a sound. The intruder's shadow stretched across the living room, twisting like smoke under the dim light. Every step I took was calculated, every breath measured. I thought about the last time this had happened, how we had been caught off guard, how panic had led to mistakes. Not this time. Not again. A loud creak behind me made my blood freeze. I froze too, holding Ethan close. The intruder's voice, calm, almost teasing, "You really think you can hide from me?" My chest tightened. But instead of answering, I focused on the door. Just a few more steps. The handle was cold under my fingers. I glanced back. Their silhouette was advancing slowly, deliberately, like a predator savoring the hunt. I whispered to Ethan, "Almost there. One more step." Suddenly the lights flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the hallway. My heart leapt into my throat, but instinct took over. I stepped through the door, pressing myself and Ethan against the cool brick of the side wall outside. The night air hit us like a wave, cold, sharp, cleansing. I could hear the intruder cursing inside, unable to see us in the shadows. I pulled Ethan closer, feeling his rapid breaths against my shoulder. Freedom was just beyond the next corner. 1 block, 2 blocks, then the streetlights would guide us. Safety felt tantalizingly close, and yet my mind raced. We weren't safe yet. Not entirely. I let out a quiet sigh, more to myself than to Ethan. The night was ours for now. But I knew deep down this was only the beginning. We darted across the driveway, shadows stretching long under the faint glow of the streetlights. Ethan clutched my hand like a lifeline, small and trembling but determined. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud in my ears, steady but fast. The neighbors' houses loomed, dark and silent, the kind of silence that held secrets. I kept my voice low, whispering directions, "Left here, quick, careful now." Every instinct screamed caution, every nerve alert. A sudden noise behind us made me freeze. Footsteps? A door slamming? I didn't dare look. Instead, I adjusted my grip on Ethan and pulled him faster. We had to reach the main street, the place with lights, with people, with hope. 3 blocks away, the neon glow of a 24-hour convenience store came into view. Salvation. I thought about barging in, calling someone, anyone, to help. But the intruder might still be watching. We needed cover first. I ducked into an alley beside the store, breathing in the night air, sharp and almost fragrant with wet asphalt and pine from a nearby park. Ethan's small form pressed against me, shivering. "Are we safe?" he whispered. "Almost," I told him. My voice was calm, deliberate, because fear didn't help. Not now. Safety was in action, in calculation, in staying ahead. I peeked around the corner. No sign of movement. Relief washed over me, but it was careful, controlled. I knew better than to celebrate too soon. Finally, I led Ethan to the store entrance. Lights flicked on inside, a bell chiming as we stepped in. The cashier, a young man with sleepy eyes, looked up. I gave a small, forced smile. "We need help," I said, my voice steady, controlled. And for the first time that night we were seen. Fully. Not as shadows, not as whispers, not as someone to be overlooked. Inside the store, the warmth hit us like a wave. Ethan sagged against the counter, finally letting go of my hand. I kept my eyes scanning the aisles, the doors, every reflection in the glass, every shadow. You never know what's still out there. The cashier nodded slowly, reading my tension. "Stay here," he said, picking up the phone. "I'll call someone." I sank onto the stool beside Ethan, pressing his small hand into mine. He was quiet now, staring at the linoleum floor, too tired to talk, too scared to rest. The minutes stretched. Outside, the night whispered and breathed. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed. Time felt warped, too fast, too slow. And yet, in that store, it was the first real safety we'd had in hours. When the door jingled again, I tensed, expecting danger, but it was Officer Martinez, uniform crisp, eyes sharp but calm. Relief surged so sharply I almost couldn't breathe. "You two all right?" he asked. I nodded, barely trusting my voice. Ethan leaned closer, whispering, "Mom, they were going to take us." His words hung in the air, bitter and raw. I swallowed the lump in my throat and hugged him tightly. "Not anymore," I said. Officer Martinez's presence was reassuring, but I knew the story didn't end here. Someone had been watching, planning, assuming we'd be easy. No, not us. After reporting everything, the officer assured us we'd be safe for now, that precautions would be taken, that the strangers wouldn't find us again. I watched Ethan's eyelids droop, finally allowing exhaustion to claim him. I stood outside for a moment, the cold biting my cheeks, the night calm but alert. This night had tried to break us, to erase our existence with fear and threat. But we weren't erased. Not tonight. And in that quiet, I realized something vital. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. Courage was moving forward anyway, protecting those you loved and refusing to vanish. The morning after, the apartment felt impossibly still. Ethan slept in the living room, tangled in blankets, the faint rise and fall of his chest the only sound. I sat by the window, tracing the frost on the glass, replaying last night in my mind. Every shadow, every whisper, every step outside our door, it was all real, and yet somehow we had survived it. I knew we couldn't stay here forever. The strangers had our trail and the city was too open, too exposed. I opened my laptop and began searching for temporary safe houses, shelters, anything that could guarantee we weren't easy to find. Every click was measured, careful, almost ritualistic. Ethan needed safety. I needed control. By mid-morning, I had a small list of options. Each one felt like a lifeline. I printed addresses, notes, phone numbers. I double-checked my bank account, making sure we had enough cash for the next week at least. Planning gave me a sense of power I hadn't felt in hours. When Ethan stirred, rubbing his eyes, I knelt beside him. "Hey," I whispered. "We're going somewhere safe. Just for a little while." He nodded, sleepy but trusting, and that trust burned fiercely in me. I promised myself I would not let anyone take it from him. Not ever. The day unfolded with quiet precision. We packed essentials, hid the small valuables I could carry, and mapped our route. The city buzzed outside, oblivious to the terror of the previous night. People moved in patterns, unaware, and that anonymity worked in our favor. By evening we were on the road, headlights slicing through the twilight. Ethan hummed softly beside me, exhausted but comforted. And I realized, fear had been a teacher. It had sharpened my instincts, revealed my strength, and shown me that even in the darkest nights, I could be both shield and guide. Tonight we weren't hiding. We were surviving. And survival was the first step toward reclaiming our lives. The cabin was small, tucked between pines and overlooking a frozen lake. Snow crunched under our boots as we stepped out, and the air smelled of pine resin and cold. Ethan's cheeks were pink from the cold, and for the first time in days, I saw a real smile on his face. It was fragile, but it was enough. Inside, the fireplace crackled, casting shadows that danced across the walls. I unpacked our things slowly, deliberately, treating each item like it carried the weight of survival. Ethan ran to the window, pressing his hands against the glass, eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful," he whispered. I nodded, my heart tightening. It was the first time I felt the heavy burden of fear lift, if only slightly. That night, after tucking Ethan into bed, I sat in the quiet cabin, staring into the fire. The silence was complete. No footsteps in the hallway, no whispered threats outside the door, no fear pressing against my chest. Just warmth, just life, just the quiet knowledge that we had escaped. I thought about the strangers, about last night, about the panic and terror that had clawed at me. And I realized something important. Strength doesn't come from avoiding fear. Strength comes from facing it, surviving it, and moving forward despite it. I had protected Ethan, navigated chaos, and taken control when everything felt out of hand. As I watched the snow falling outside, I understood that this was more than survival. This was reclaiming our lives, redefining our safety, and asserting that no one, not strangers, not circumstance, could dictate our story. I poured a cup of tea, letting the warmth spread through me, and whispered to myself, "We made it. We're safe. And we will be okay." Outside, the world remained uncertain, but inside this cabin we had found peace. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was free, and so was Ethan. The night was ours, quiet and complete.